Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very excited and grateful to have Ken Mengel of KM Golf Performance presenting this morning on the Catalyst. Ken has presented, this will be the third time that he's presented on the Catalyst. The section is very grateful for his partnership, his sponsorship, and his commitment to helping the section grow in education. He's got some great information for nutrition essential for the golf athlete. Going to be presenting this morning. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so feel free to raise your hand, hit me up in the chat bar, and or come off mute and interject. We'd love the interaction. We want to make today as casual and interactive as possible. And Ken, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and welcome to the Catalyst webinar series again.
Thank you, John. Thank you, and thank you everybody for joining this morning, and hopefully some good information for you all. Something new. We'll keep it as light and informative as possible. And like John said, any questions, let us know, and happy to do the best I can to answer, or at least direct you to the right locations, the right ways. So, nutrition essentials for the golf athlete. You could say nutrition is essential, and nutrition is essential not only for that competitive golf athlete, but it's essential for the golf athlete who's going out there for the recreational round as well. If we're looking to play like a champion every time we go out, whether we are a recreational golfer, whether we're a competitive junior, whether we're a competitive professional, whether we are a professional golfer, we have to know what it takes. And we are what we eat. So what does it take to play like a champion? Is you have to practice like a champion. You have to prepare like a champion mentally and physically, and you have to fuel your mind and body like a champion. So again, this is all across the spectrum, not just for the person playing in tournament golf, but this is that golfer who's looking to break 100. This is that golfer who's looking to break 90 for the first time, break 80 for the first time. You get those back nine woes, and some of those back nine woes can be right here and solved hopefully with some knowledge and imparting that knowledge to them in terms of proper nutrition. So golf as a sport has some very specific demands. We look at each sport individually and we say, what are the demands of each sport? What is the demands of a cross-country runner versus the demands of a hockey athlete versus the demands of a golf athlete? And golf is unique, and we have to fuel for that uniqueness. So golf in its nature is a hybrid sport. It's a power and an endurance sport. Obviously, we have a period of time, and depending on where you're playing, the day of the week you're playing, the time of day you're teeing off, and so forth, you can have rounds anywhere from 3.5 to 5-6 hours out there on the golf course. But we've got brief periods in that time frame where we are exerting high levels of power, 80, 90, up to 100% exertion. And we're looking at rapid motions, powerful floor interactions, ground interactions, speed. And these are interspersed with then walking up to 5 miles over varied terrain. Each of these roles draws on different energy systems. So we aren't just a one energy system, one type of wood on our fire machine. There are 3 primary energy systems in the human body. And they kind of go, I've listed them in order in terms of how they activate. We have the ATP system, or the adenosine triphosphate system. That ATP system is a fast burn. We're going to get into a little bit more detail on these. The anaerobic system picks up where that ATP system leaves off. And in its name, anaerobic, without oxygen, that doesn't require oxygen. Oxygen, the aerobic system, is part of, that's the bigger part of what allows us to last for the round of golf, what allows us to play 3.5, 4.5 plus hours and walk 4, 5, 6, 7 miles. What allows us to be explosive is the ATP system. Think of this as your sprint system. This is your jump system. The high energy release. So this is very, very light wood on the fire. This is almost like putting cardboard on a fire. It burns hot. and it burns fast, and it is done. So we're looking at a system that lasts a few seconds, approximately 10 seconds. Then it takes minutes to replenish. So we'll see kind of a theme in these energy systems. These things that burn hot and fast take a long relative time to replenish. So we're looking at a 10-second window here. In golf, we're looking at a 1.5 seconds maybe in a full swing from the time of takeaway to the time of impact. In that 1.5 seconds, we're looking at over a minute, what research has shown, for that energy system to recover the energy lost in the swing. So that's a huge discrepancy. And that's one of the things, even in practice, we need to be aware of is if we're grabbing balls and hitting balls and raking a ball over and hitting balls, we're not doing our energy system the favor that it needs. So encouraging our athletes, not only in their nutrition, but also related to their nutrition as they practice, as they hit balls, as they're teeing things up and working on the range. If they're hitting balls in less than a minute's time frame apart from each other, they're not allowing this energy system to replenish. So taking that time is important. This uses stored energy in the muscles, or they call it muscle glycogen, because it is readily accessible. Your body's not having to look to fat stores or anything else for energy. It's got it right there in the muscle and it's ready to go. As we said before, no oxygen is required. So this is not a system, again, when you have oxygen, you have lasting power. No oxygen, you have power, but no last. And this is our power system. The anaerobic system takes over where the ATP leaves off. And this lasts anywhere from 10 to 90 seconds. And again, it's a no oxygen required system. It burns hot and fast as well, but it's not as powerful a system in terms of fueling the muscles as what the ATP system is. So this is less applicable in the golf game, but this does kind of play in when we're taking a practice swing. We're taking note of things. We take a couple practice swings, we line up the shot, we step in, we make our shot. That takes longer than 10 seconds. Now we're looking at that anaerobic system playing a role. But again, no oxygen required. And then everybody's familiar with working on your aerobic system, working on your cardiovascular system. This is the aerobic system. This is the muscular component, the energy component that's related to that cardiovascular exercise that related to our cardiovascular training. This system is built to last, but this system is not built for power. So when we look at types of muscle fibers, most people are familiar with type 1 fibers, type 2 fibers. Type 1 fibers are kind of like if you're looking at a chicken, type 1 fibers are white meat, type 2 fibers are dark meat. Type 1 fibers are built to last. They're built to sustain. They're not built to generate a lot of power, but they are the first muscle fibers that turn on when we contract a muscle. They're also the last ones that turn off. These are our posture muscles. This is our core, our abdominal core. This is our upper back, our shoulder girdle, even to a large degree, our rotator cuff. We have these muscles because our posture is designed to last. And again, as we've talked about in the past, posture is allowing us to move in efficient ways. Movement in efficient ways allows for power. So these are related to power, but they're related to power by putting us in good positions. If we don't train into this system, we're going to have issues lasting around a golf. However, if we don't train in a power system, we're not going to have the power that we need for golf. So again, here's that hybrid component. This is what meets these demands of the 4 hours. The fuel is different. This is more blood sugar based. This is more fat and fat conversion towards glycogen. This requires oxygen because this gets into different parts of the cell. This gets into breaking fat down, which again, we'll see in a little bit, is a fantastic fuel source, far better than sugar is in terms of efficiency. Fat is hardwood. Fat is smoking wood. Fat is taking mesquite or oak wood and putting it on the smoker and letting things go low and slow for a long time, versus the cardboard or the pine wood that we put on the ATP system. This requires oxygen. So when we're talking with our athletes and we're asking them about, are you breathing? not only so that they can move well and efficiently, so that they're not tightening things up, but this is making sure that they're actually fueling their system with the oxygen needed so that they're getting that ability to burn this fat. So what role does fat play? Fat is key in our nutrition. So years back, you had the movement, fat-free, 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 which meant more sugar, more sugar, more sugar, because something has to give food flavor. Fat is a huge flavor enhancer. That's why bacon is delicious. So we've got fat's role in our energy systems, and fat's role in our health is fat assists in absorption of, they call them the fat-friendly vitamins, basically. You've got vitamin A, so we've got vision, heart and lung function, and immune system. Vitamin D, calcium absorption, prevent cramps and spasms. Vitamin D, a lot of people think is just for bone health, strong bones. And vitamin D is great for strong bones. Again, calcium absorption. However, calcium is also big in functioning with muscle function. So you've got cardiac function. You've got a lot of things that are associated with vitamin D. This is a really big one here. Vitamin E is an antioxidant, prevents tissue damage. So here's your anti-inflammatory and naturally occurring anti-inflammatory should be in our diet. And again, if we're low on fats, we're going to have a hard time taking that in. Then vitamin K, kind of that forgotten vitamin, blood clotting, regulates blood calcium. So we have vitamin D and vitamin K that play roles together in that. We've got heart health and we've got cognition. We've got thought process. So again, a good rounded diet coupled with fats in the diet allow us to make the most of these vitamins that are coming into our system. Fat is highly energy dense. And here's the key, guys. Things that are highly energy dense tend to stay in our system for a long time. So again, when we eat something that's got a bit of a fat load to it, we're going to find that we stay satiated longer. Fat gives us 9 kilocalories per gram of fat. And again, you don't have to measure your grams, but this is more just for that knowledge base of how good fat is as an energy source. 9 kilocalories per gram of fat. Carbohydrates and proteins give us 4 kilocalories per gram, each of those. So we're looking at over twice the efficiency in terms of energy available from fat as from carbohydrates. That's why we don't see those spikes. You don't see energy spikes from fats and then a drop. What you see from fat is a nice long burn. So the way I kind of see things, golf is a 3-round fight. We've got round 1, which is pre-round. Got round 2, which is during our round. And we've got round 3, which is post-round. And each one of these is essential when we're looking at performance and ultimately play and recovery. Because if we've got multiple days, recovery becomes a huge, huge component. So round 1 begins up to 2 days prior to the event. So if you talk with avid distance runners, it used to be thought that distance runners carb loaded. They had the big pasta meal the night before an event. Well, if they had the big carb meal the night before the event, they didn't give their body enough time to truly absorb and store those carbohydrates for use the next day. It's about a day and a half to 2 days that we want to start looking at it. So when we're talking with especially our competitive golf athletes, we want to start educating them and having them start to think of their round multiple days prior to them playing. When I'm talking with my golf athletes as they're heading out and I see them on a Thursday and they've got a Saturday tournament, I start talking to them about what they're having for dinner that night so that they're prepping for that tournament that weekend. So up to 2 days prior to the event, complex carbohydrates. So again, not processed. We're not looking at chips and cookies and ice cream, and carbohydrates are far more than sugars. We want things that have that complexity. We want, again, white isn't always bad when it comes to food. White rice is okay. Brown rice is great. Your pastas with good wheat flours, potatoes, sweet potatoes, things along that line are great carbohydrates. If you're going to have breads, you want to make sure that it's a whole grain type of a bread, something that's not an overly processed Wonder White bread, because those are those fast burns. They don't store well. Fats and proteins here. We want to make sure that we've got some of those in our system. Fats and proteins satiate. They keep you full and happy longer. They also aid in maintaining normal blood glucose levels. And that relates to our insulin levels then. So when we pair our carbohydrates with our fats and our proteins, we don't see insulin spikes like we do when we just take in carbohydrates. This is important during our round of golf too, as we'll get to. The morning of the event, 1 to 2 hours. And again, everybody should know their system. Some people do well an hour before taking in a meal. Some people feel full for 2 hours. So I would say if you're one of those people, you want to stretch it out a little bit farther, but you want to be sure not to be 3-4 hours out away from your event when you've last eaten, because that becomes a little too far out. You want to be at least noshing on things as you get up to that point in time. So your pre-round meal an hour to 2 before. And again, there's they talk about PFF, protein, fat, and fiber. Protein, fat, and fiber. This is something Robert Yang from TPI, who's their nutrition specialist, talks about a lot. And it makes a lot of sense. Again, that protein and fat help to maintain that satiated feeling. They give you nutrition that you're going to be able to utilize in that long aerobic component of the event. But they also, working with the fiber end of things, which is part of your complex carbohydrates, help to moderate your blood sugar levels. So we see a sustained energy, not a spike. Round 2, this is our round. Every swing, every bunker, every hill, every step requires energy. So there's a constant need to replenish these stores. If we're constantly taking, but we're not giving back, we're going to have a hard time as we get towards the backside. So snacking every 3 to 4 holes will replenish and sustain that energy level. Again, we want to feed a fire like I enjoy grilling and barbecuing, so I refer to a lot of food things that way, like we're feeding the smoker, right? We don't need a big hot flame. We need that low and slow. We need that constant level of energy coming into the system. So snacking on something every 3 to 4 holes is a great way to do that. I'm always amazed when I ask my golfers, and this goes from junior golfers all the way up through adults and senior golfers, what they eat when they're on the golf course. And most of them say, well, I eat something at the turn. And that's where I kind of step in and really try and let them know how to go about snacking versus eating. How do you feel after you've had that meal at the turn? Because most people by 2.5 hours into a golf round are already hungry, so they're going to eat something larger. So I think that that's something that we need to look at. And this is, again, a role of education we can all play in working with our golfers. That golfer looking to break 100, he may have had a great front nine, but that back nine comes crashing down. What are they fueling their system with? Easy to eat items are key. So I'll go over a couple things later on, but things like nuts, things like beef jerky, salt is an important factor, especially on a hot day. So it helps us maintain our hydration. Our brains are in constant need of blood glucose and essential fats to maintain peak mental and physical function. So our brains aren't just thinkers, right? We're not just planning strategy. We don't just make poor shot choices because the brain's depleted of blood glucose and essential fats. Maybe it needs some of that to help that out, but it's also a motor planner. So we may think the right shot, but we can't execute the right shot because that part of the programming coming from the brain may be compromised because we haven't fed it well. So let's make sure we're feeding it well during the round. And then post round, we want to watch, I'm sorry, but let's stay in round. Here's my beware slide. I got ahead of myself. Drinks can torpedo your system and your performance. So drinking a soda out on the golf course, having a full unwatered down energy drink, watch your Gatorade, your Powerade, things like that. Things that are really caffeinated, watch the hyper-caffeinated drinks. A little caffeine dose through the day could be a performance enhancer. A high dose of caffeine prior to things can really, especially when you're talking about fine motor skills and getting into, say, like your short game and your putting, they can be a detriment to you. So you want to watch that. That high sugar content, again, from our drinks. We may be snacking well, eating well, but we're hitting it with a bunch of sugar on our drink. That hits the system faster than even the food does because it's already broken down, easy to bring in, and we hit the spike. We can see not only the spike in energy, but that rapid crash. And we get jittery, poor thinking, and motor planning. So this could be something to consider for late round, though. You get to the 14th, 15th hole. You've got 3-4 holes ahead of you, and you're starting to feel that little down. Now isn't the time to feed the fat to your system. Now's the time to give a little kick to your system. So this may be the time to have a little bit of sugar. This may be the time to have a full strength energy drink. maybe the time to take a bite of a Snickers bar, and after every shot, take another bite of that Snickers bar and kind of carry yourself through. So this can be a helpful late round boost. This could be key too on those days where you're playing 36 and you get to particularly that back nine of that second round. Starting to fuel your system with a little quicker energy is not a bad way to do it. The key here is you kind of have to keep it up, and you want to be, again, feeding it in doses, not feeding it in a big bunch. So round 3, here's our recovery. And our key is to eat as soon as possible because energy has been depleted. Our body is still needing that energy. Our brain still needs the energy to make decisions, to do all the things that it's got to do to keep the body running, to get us home safely, all those factors. We need to replenish glycogen, which is stored glucose. So foods rich in complex carbohydrates, starches, things like that are great. Here's where having, again, potato, rice, some pasta, things of that sort of good bread is really a good time and place to have that, as well as your clean proteins. We say, why protein? We didn't strength train when we were golfing. We were out there as more an endurance base. We did pop some power pieces out there. Well, protein is what the body's made up of. So when we're looking at everything from our connective tissues to our muscles and our tendons and everything else in between, except for our bone structure, protein is the overwhelming base point of what we're built from. So when we're looking at healing and recovery, protein is key. We're looking at supporting normal glucose levels. Again, we're going to feed carbohydrates to our system to help recover and replenish our tank. We also want to support normal blood glucose levels so that we don't see spikes there afterwards. It helps to support healthy blood pressure. Clean proteins aid in conversion of fats to glucose. So again, as we're still in that endurance end of things, our body is still going to fats because likely our carbohydrates have been pretty well tapped. Most of us have enough fats to continue on for a good long period of time in our energy after our round. And again, our protein in our system is helping our body use that fat efficiently. Protein, and I think these are really, really important pieces when we're looking at recovery. Protein is a fatigue fighter, and protein is a mood enhancer. So when we're in that state where we're a little bit fatigued, I don't know. I think that whether it's you see those Snickers ads where you get the person that is behaving a little off of their normal game, little moody. This is where maybe a little bit of protein is what we all need, and I think that this is something that is important. Fights fatigue, yet it supports normal sleep patterns, and that's an important piece too in our recovery is the normal sleep pattern. So when we finish that round, we kind of need a well-rounded aid our recovery with the clean proteins and make sure our tissues replenished and rebuilt for the next day and or the next week beyond.
Ken, can you hear me?
I can hear you, John.
Yeah, in terms of adrenaline, how does that affect carbohydrates and proteins in terms of snacking during the different stages of the round? How does adrenaline affect the way your body breaks down both of those elements?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Adrenaline overall is when you hit that fight or flight kind of a point, your body's looking for the fastest, easiest energy that it can have. So it needs the glucose at that stage to kind of fuel that. That's where kind of, again, that's tempering that excitement is another key skill set to be developed. Again, we can kind of regulate which system our energy is being drawn from by learning how to control those components as well. So allowing things to be driven by that adrenaline, by that fight or flight, by the excitatory system will drive you to kind of crave on that carbohydrate side of things. Your body's looking for that fast energy. Simple breathing techniques can be really, really helpful in terms of bringing that piece back into control. we want to really find that balance of excitation and control, right? Because otherwise we are going to kind of head into that spike, and adrenaline can only last for so long. It won't last for 4 hours. And again, it does burn hot and fast, and recovery after having a spike of excitation is a longer process. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that working on some of those breathing techniques, the nasal breathing techniques in particular, are calmers. As we get into mouth breathing, we're excited, and that just goes way back to our primitive being. You know, when we are fight or flight, and if we've got to get out of something and we've got to move now or stand up and fight it, we tend to go mouth breathing. We tend to go upper portion of our chest breathing, and that's an excitation to the brain that says, bring the energy on now. If I get into the nasal breathing, I can draw the diaphragm into play a lot more. I can get my vasodilation through other factors that happen with my nasal breathing. I can settle that system, and I can stay on that lower, slower energy burn. So,
but from a routine and general practice standpoint,
yep.
When you're playing, when a golfer's playing their normal round, that's not competitive based or not a tournament, their snacking intervals are at certain times at certain periods. But how does that change in tournaments when that adrenaline is higher than it is as it would be in a normal practice round?
Right. So you may find in a situation like that, you may find that you need to kind of pair your food. So like we early talked about, kind of staying away from carbohydrates and things like that as you're snacking. And I'm going to go through some snacking options and things just so that people have a little broader idea of some of those. And some people here may have some thoughts on what works for them and what they've found to be helpful in those areas too. And I'd love to hear that. But it may need to be that, you know, for every piece of beef jerky I have 2 Sour Patch Kids, and you kind of feed both ends of those systems. That maybe it is a diluted energy drink. I tell people a lot of times, it's, you know, take a half and half, do a half a Gatorade and half a water, put them together, and, you know, do 2 bottles, and now you've got a little bit of sugar hitting the system, because you don't want to deny the sugar. You're using it every time you swing that club. You've burned a load of glucose. We want to restore that into the system. So I think that sometimes things like that can be really helpful. I always tell people, it's what do you enjoy? You know, what if you had one snack you enjoy on the sweet, kind of the sugar side of things, and you have one snack you enjoy on the salt and or protein side of things, make sure you have that. So you know, peanut butter filled pretzels, your beef jerky, your nuts on the sweet and salty, or on the salty side of things, on the fat side of things, and then looking at you know, take a bite of that Snickers bar every 3 holes, and get a little bit of that sugar back in your system with that diluted energy drink. I would still watch how much you're dosing, how quickly, because again, your body, when you're in that high energy state of mind and that excitation phase, cortisol is released into the system, and that's a carbohydrate craver. So if we can, again, kind of work on that balancing of that mental end with the physical end is still really important, but I think you can still kind of balance that feeding as well. Don't deny the sugar, but you just want to moderate it and find something that makes you happy. You know, when you're chewing something, it shouldn't be something that you're doing just to do. It should be something that kind of is a mind settler, something that's comfortable, something that's familiar.
And Ken, real quick, there's a fair amount of golfers out there, competitive golfers, that chew tobacco or dip tobacco products. How does the nicotine in the bloodstream affect the nutritional aspect of snacking during the round?
I would say it's going to make swallowing food a little bit of a challenge, because you don't necessarily want to swallow that byproduct. Again, you're looking at something that's an exciter, right? That nicotine is an exciter. It's a heart rate increaser. It's a respiratory increaser. It's something that you know, you've got the pupils a little more dilated when people are on that. Some people say it's calming, right? They do it because it kind of calms them. It calms them because it's familiar. What it does to them physiologically is it's still an exciter. So it does add to that excitation. In terms of how it affects what they absorb, I don't know the exact mechanisms on that. I don't know that I can comment on nicotine's effect in its whole on the immediacy, especially of snacking. I do know that people that I play with that do dip or chew on the course don't tend to eat as much, and they will eat at the turn because they'll clean that out, rinse their mouth, take a couple bites of something, put a hot dog down there, and then on the 10th tee box, they're reloaded again and ready to go. So you tend to see more of those peaks and valleys in eating versus like that constant feed has been my experience.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. All right. So the most critical component of nutrition is hydration. And we've talked about this in past. I talk about hydration a lot. The human body is about 70% water. Our brain and our lungs are about 80% water. So those pieces that think for us, that make plans for us, that help us in our movement patterns and do all the motor planning and the sending of signals to get us moving well as what is feeding us for that aerobic component, especially with the lungs, with the oxygen and CO2 exchange, are more water demanding than the rest of our body is. So it makes sense. We should be feeding that hydration component. So some of the many roles of water regulates our body temperature. We all know on a hot day we sweat. Sweating is our way of regulating part of our body temperature. We get that the evaporation component, and that keeps us relatively cooled. Water is that key role. Blood composition. A majority of our blood, the liquid portion of our blood, is a water base. Again, if we are dehydrated, blood composition becomes a little thicker, becomes harder for the blood to move through the system. For the heart has to work harder. Our joint health. Our joints are, again, cartilage base. We've got cartilage surfaces. We've got cartilage bushings between our knees, right? Our meniscus. We've got a labrum at the shoulder. We've got a labrum at the hip. We've got all kinds of cartilaginous pieces in our body that are critical for our movements. Cartilage absorbs nutrition not through blood flow so much, because most cartilage is very, very, very poorly, if vascularized at all. And it absorbs as a sponge absorbs. You put a sponge in the bottom of a full kitchen sink and you push the water out of that sponge, and then you take your hand off the sponge and the water comes back into the sponge, and you push it out and you take it off, and it does the same thing. Our joints do the same thing. As we load our joints, as we move, as muscles contract and put pressure on the joints, the cartilage gets pressed on, gets squeezed out, it releases, it re-imbibes fluid, it takes in nutrition that way. Water is key there. So days where we wake up and we're a little dehydrated from play the day before, some of the soreness can be delayed onset muscle soreness. Some of our soreness and stiffness is simply the fact that we need more water in our system, and we need to put the oil in the crankcase, so to speak. And then water is critical for maintenance of strength and muscle function, because again, over 70% or so of our muscle tissue is based on water. And if we are a little low on that, we're going to have an alter in our function. So I would say hydration is our most important nutritional component that we need to watch for. So dehydration is a condition where the body's eliminated more water than it's taken in to meet its needs. It's a pretty broad definition. We're not going to get into parsing all the details out on what percentage of hydration levels and things like that. Suffice it to say that they show in research a 2% deficit, a 2% relative dehydration starts to alter our thinking, starts to alter our ability to problem solve, and starts to alter our motor programming. So that there is research that shows 2% is enough dehydration to start to alter how we function from the brain down. So that first effect becomes obvious, has negative effects on tissue healing and recovery. And then again, obviously, you go too far, there are potentials for extreme danger. So if I encourage one thing of my athletes, I encourage them to hydrate when they're on the golf course. And that doesn't matter if it's wintertime. That's one of the more challenging times, right? It's cool, it's nice, you don't feel hot, you're not sweating a ton, you don't really feel that thirst drive like you do when it's a hot summer day. It is still as important to drink water then as it is on that hot summer day. So how much water is enough? Rule of thumb, body weight times 1/2 is the ounces of water we should take in each day. This is every day. This is a normal, this is a Thursday, right? So on Thursday today, I challenge people, be honest with their body weight in their own mind, divide that by 2, and that's how many ounces of water you're looking to drink today. As you get into hotter days, factors that affect this, again, temperature, humidity, the vigorousness of your activity, the duration of your activity, all of these can increase that level. But this 1/2 of your body weight in ounces of water every day is your base need. These other factors just increase that need. Recognize that we wake each day in a state of dehydration. Depending on how long you sleep, it's been 6, 8, 10 hours since you last took water in. That's a long time. So we talk about breakfast, breaking a fast, right? That gives us nutrition. We've been fasting since we last ate. Break fast. Well, it's the same thing with hydration. We need to break that fast of hydration. So they talk about first thing in the morning. We all kind of wake up. There's a little fog. Water, intake of water, about 20 to 25% of your daily intake of water in the morning is ideal. But if you take a pint of water in the morning, within about 30 minutes of waking, you're going to notice that fog, even more so than coffee, is going to give you, you're going to have that fog lifted. Some of that, again, is that relative dehydration on the nervous system and just feeding that the proper way. And this is really important to remember on early tea time days. We want our joints moving well. We want our muscles moving well. We want that flexibility. We want a low blood pressure. We want the blood system moving nice and smooth. We want to be thinking straight and moving straight. Hydration is one of those keys in how we start things off. So early tea time days, it's not wake up and grab a cup of coffee and head out and just start swinging. It's wake up, get some hydration. And I'm never going to tell people not to drink coffee because I think I live on it. But it is one of those things that comes second to me. And I wake up each day and try and make sure I get at least 20 ounces of water in before I take my first sip of coffee, because I know once the first sip of coffee crosses my lips, I'm going to challenge myself to take in enough water. So time your fluid intake. Critical to allow time to hydrate and to void. Last thing you want to do is have chugged a big thing of water. You get to the first tee box, you make your swing, you're walking down, and it's like, oh man, I got to go now. Give yourself about 2 hours before activity. About 25% of your daily needs should be taken in within about 2 hours of your activity. So from the time you wake up until you start getting up and going, you want about 25. Yeah.
Ken, real quick from the field here. In terms of that equation on the previous slide about 1/2 of your body weight in ounces of water a day, is that just pure water? Is that take into account the water that's in all these other liquids that we drink, like coffee or sports drinks or tea or whatever?
If when you kind of read through the research and you talk with the purists are going to say on the nutrition side of things, this is water. Your other pieces are considered supplemental. Now,
your body to a certain extent, your body is taking the water out of the coffee, isn't it?
Correct. And coffee has actually been, I think, declassified as a dehydrating element by the National Strength and Conditioning Association a number of years back. It had always been considered a kind of a hyperdiuretic. You avoided more than you took in, but they've really done research that has shown different. I think that what we need to do is make sure we're intaking fluids. The danger that we run into when we say we're going to supplement or I took in X amount of fluid and it wasn't necessarily water is if you've got juices. Juices are great, but juices have high sugar content. Even if you're looking at fresh squeezed orange juice, a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice takes about 3 to 4 oranges to make that glass of orange juice. 3 to 4 oranges has a pretty good sugar dose to it. So I think that when we're looking at this, we're looking at it purely from saying, how can we cleanly hydrate without affecting some of those other factors? Because we're also going to eat and we're also going to do these other feed our system in that way. And that's how we kind of can play and get things out of balance on a carbohydrate side, on our balances there, see some of those spikes. So I really encourage as much of this to be water as possible, and then everything else becomes kind of the bonus. right? If you have a Diet Coke, that's your thing. You're going to take water out of that Diet Coke. There's no doubt about it. But you're going to get a cleaner shot of it with taking water. Yeah, but I would never tell people, that doesn't count. I think to a degree it all counts, and I think that water just counts the easiest.
Thank you, sir.
So before activity, about 25%. During the round, about 50% of our need. And again, this is whether it's straight water. We talked about doing like a 50-50 energy drink to water type of a regulation. Gives you a little bit of sugar, a little bit of flavor. You've got like those liquid IV packets, things like that. Those are all great. But about 50% of our need during our round. So regular sipping is essential. 2 to 4 ounces per hole kind of meets most people's body size needs. As you're looking at that, 2 to 4 ounces is not that much. So if you've got a regular sipping part of your protocol, that's a really good thing. And making sure that I tell my junior golfers is finding, you got to find that habit, whether it's you take your tee shot, you put your club back in your bag. Before you grab your bag and throw it on your shoulder, you take a sip of water, throw your bag on your shoulder, or grab your push cart and start heading down the fairway, making that a part of their process so that, again, they're fueling their system well. Watch your sugar levels. Things that some people find really helpful in terms of staying satiated in a round so that they don't have to snack as much. So this is kind of your liquid snack, using things like branched chain amino acids. So this is a supplement. They're great because they are partially digested, essentially. They're amino acids that are partially broken down. You take a bite of a turkey sandwich, and the turkey in that sandwich has great protein to it, but it takes time to break that protein down. So it's going to be a while before it can hit your system and really do you a lot of good. This branched chain amino acid will hit your system quick, and it can help you stay in that full state feeling longer, again, because you are getting protein. You are getting these pieces to your system, just as you would from that turkey sandwich. Just hits it a little bit easier. And again, they come in different flavors, they come in different things. So again, your satisfaction on what you're intaking can be a little higher when you add some supplements like this. So something to take a look at. And then post round, you have a bit more freedom. Here's where you can hit a sport drink. Here's where you can hit. I used to think it was crazy after hearing people that would run distance races and say the thing that they craved afterwards was chocolate milk, until I started running distance events and craved chocolate milk at the end. When you hit that first chocolate milk at the end of a half marathon or something like that, and you take it in, and it is so good because it has protein, fat, and sugar. It has the carbohydrates readily accessible. It has the proteins and fats to keep things regulated, and it keeps you in a satiated state. Your Arnold Palmer's, and again, of course, if you're 21 or over, having a beer afterwards is not a bad thing to do. 94% water in beer. So here's one of your points, John. And again, with your sports drinks, with things like that, you're looking at a high percentage of water. Great balance of true minerals. You've got B vitamins in there. So B6, especially heart attack prevention, and carbohydrates. So if you enjoy that, you are not wrong to have one, and can be a good part of a recovery, so long as, again, it is in moderation. So a little bit of a cheat sheet on our golf performance. 1 to 2 nights before, kind of some ideas. I would never say I'm going to prescribe somebody a diet plan, because that is not my role, but having a base knowledge kind of is, and a couple ideas here. Some whole wheat pasta with butter or olive oil, something of that sort. Grilled salmon, little salad. So we get some fiber in there with our pasta, with our salad. The oil and vinegar, again, you get fat, you get acid. Vinegar is a great cleanser. It's a great antioxidant. Grilled salmon for our protein, also salmon for fat, tuna for fat, things like that are great. So we've got fat, we've got fiber, and we've got a little bit of carbohydrate going in there with the whole wheat pasta as well. Burrito with brown rice, black beans, tomatoes, avocados. You can substitute in there, but just some ideas on things that are really good to have. Kind of we've got a whole spectrum, everything from a true whole protein all the way through our vegetables, all the way through to our fats. So when we look at avocado, if you don't want cheese, the avocado carries a great fat load to it, and that's a great tool to have. And again, hydration is our key. On our day of, kind of our pre-round, morning, if we have a morning tournament, again, kind of some classic breakfast ideas up there. But you'll notice you're not missing anything. These are all pretty full breakfasts. They don't have to be huge, right? You can eat what you are comfortable with, and that's the key. It doesn't have to be 3-egg omelet and these things. It can be 1 egg. It can, and again, eggs are a pretty perfect nutrition source. You get fat, you get protein, you get some good stuff in there. Something simple. So people say, I don't have time. How about hard boiling some eggs before, a couple of days before, having them in the fridge, cracked and ready to roll. And now you do have time because you can eat that in the car. You can eat that at pretty much anywhere you're at. If you have an afternoon tea time, maybe a little different, but you may have your normal breakfast. And then again, a small lunch beforehand. Have something with a clean protein. You've got something with some fiber with the salad, with some avocado, something light like that. So now I've got my protein, my fat, my fiber. I've got it in a smaller dose. It's going to keep me happy longer. And again, I'm going to do my normal snacking on course. So afternoon golf is important that you fuel appropriately. Sometimes that timing becomes a challenge when you've got that 10:30 tea time. What do you do then? Make sure you have a good meal before that. Make sure you've got a good breakfast in your system. And then during round, every 3 to 4 holes, nuts and seeds if you tolerate that well. Trail mix, watch how much candy you put in there. Here's where, again, you can throw some M&Ms in there. I think one of the greatest candies ever invented is M&Ms with peanuts, because then you get both ends of it kind of made up there. But watch how much candy, watch how much of like the dried fruits. Dried fruits are great because you do get the fiber component, but you do get a high sugar content on some of those. You want to make sure it's got a good balance to it. Veggies that travel well, carrots, celery, things that are firm, things that aren't going to get crushed in your bag, are great. Again, you're getting a little carbohydrate. You're definitely getting the fiber component from those. And sometimes just keeping our mouth happy is really important. So again, a little celery with some peanut butter in there, things like that are really good. Some fruits, not all fruits. And again, some fruits, not all fruits, because some fruits travel well. Some fruits, not all fruits, because some fruits release sugar like right now. You eat watermelon, you've got sugar in your system pretty darn quickly. It's a quick fueler. You eat an apple, you eat dried apricots. You kind of get that feel in your mouth with dried apricots or cherries or things like that. There's a lot of fiber to them. There's a little more chew factor, right? You've got to do a little bit more to get it down. Those things you have to chew a little bit more tend to have a little more fiber, and that's why they release their sugars a little slower. These are some great ideas for your fruits. Beef jerky or some type of a jerky. Again, you get your protein, you get your salt. That's an important piece. Let's not forget we need that sodium into the system as well to function well, particularly on the hot days when you get gritty and grainy. You better be putting the sodium in the system, because that's what's going to help to hold our hydration. And cheese, something of that sort. So again, some ideas, and there's something on there for everybody. If you eat meat, great. If you don't eat meat, if you're vegetarian, fantastic. If you're vegan, fantastic. There are options for everybody on that. And then post round, carbohydrate reload. Fruit, here's where you can reload with some fruit of your choice. Brown rice, potatoes, pastas, things like that. Clean proteins, sports drink, chocolate milk. All of these are good in that post round. So to play like a champion, you have to practice like a champion. You have to prepare mentally and physically like a champion, and you have to feel your body and mind like a champion. And this goes for the champion looking to break 100 or the champion looking to become a tournament champion. So make sure that as we're working with our athletes, that we're educating them so that they can reach their potentials. We don't want a simple piece like this, something that can be conveyed to them very, very simply, to be what limits them from reaching their goals, and having a happy client and having people playing like champs. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope I not only kept your interest, but gave you some insight that can be helpful for you, and happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much, Ken. Hey, I know we noticed that you mentioned jerky often, but isn't I know there's a lot of variability in what type of jerky, but doesn't jerky have a tremendous amount of sugar in it? Most jerkies?
Again, that's where you definitely want to label read, right? So if you're buying the major store brand type jerkies, yes, you do want to watch for their sugar levels. And again, that's, take a look at the back of the package. I'm a big proponent of making sure that you're looking at labels, whether it's the bread you're buying, the tortillas you're buying, the jerky you're buying. If you find local producers in a lot of communities, whether it's at farmers markets or things like that, you get the local producers of jerkies and things like that. You can find some really, really great product out there that has very little additive like that.
Sir. Well, Mr. Mengel, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you so much for coming on and educating the section for the third time, I think in 2.5 years or so. We are again very, very grateful for your partnership and for your support. For all the PGA members that joined this morning's webcast, you will receive 1 PDR credit for attending Ken's class this morning. Thank you for supporting the Catalyst webinar. Ken, thank you very much. Everybody have a great day. Next Catalyst on the docket is going to be Thursday, November 2nd. We've got Jason Gore joining us from the USGA. Again, thank you very much, Ken. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.